Before we start our story, I am looking. Most people just watch videos, not subscribe. But I know you are not one of them. Subscribe now. Let's dive into our story. The Silent Strength. They say the worst betrayals never come from strangers, but from those you trust most. I had been married to Laura for 12 years. 12 years of shared laughter, Sunday morning coffees, and quiet evenings where we planned our future. Or so I thought. It was during one of my business trips abroad, Tokyo to be exact, when everything unraveled. I was reviewing a presentation in my hotel room, the glow of the city lights outside, when my phone buzzed. It was her. At first, I smiled, thinking she wanted to hear my voice before bed. Instead, her words cut deeper than any blade. "I'm divorcing you," Laura said, her tone cold and disturbingly amused. "And I've already sold all your belongings to start fresh with my trainer." I could hear muffled laughter in the background, her laughter blending with another man's. I swallowed the anger rising in my chest. Years in business had taught me how to keep my composure when negotiations got tough, and this was no different. My voice remained steady. "I'm happy for you," I said simply. She didn't expect that. There was a pause, then another cruel chuckle before she hung up. For the rest of the trip, I moved through meetings and dinners like a man on autopilot. Colleagues noticed I was quieter, but they assumed it was jet lag. Inside though, my world had collapsed. How long had this been going on? How could she be so ruthless? And what did she mean by selling all my belongings? When the plane finally touched down that weekend, my chest tightened with a strange mix of dread and resolve. I drove home in silence, rehearsing the words I might say when I saw her again. As I opened the door to the house that once held my dreams, Laura stood there, radiant, smug, a smile plastered across her face like she had already won. But when our eyes met, her smile quickly faded. The first thing I noticed when I stepped inside wasn't Laura's expression. It was the house itself, or rather, what was left of it. The walls were bare, the living room stripped down to nothing but a single lamp in the corner. My leather armchair, the bookshelves I'd built with my own hands, even the rug my late father had gifted was gone. Laura leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, her smile trying to claw its way back onto her face. "Well," she said, tilting her head. "You're home earlier than I expected. Didn't think you'd rush back just to see this." I set my suitcase down gently, ignoring her attempt to provoke me. "You really sold everything?" She smirked. "Of course. Why let things rot in this old house when I can use the money to start fresh? My trainer and I are going places. He appreciates me in ways you never could." Her words were meant to wound, and she delivered them with precision. I should have felt rage. I should have exploded, but instead, I felt a chilling calm wash over me. I had given her more than a decade of my life, my loyalty, my trust, and in return, she treated me like a business transaction she had cleverly negotiated. "You sound proud of yourself," I said quietly. She shrugged. "Why shouldn't I be? You were always too soft, too predictable. I need excitement, strength, not another boardroom strategist with his nose buried in spreadsheets. Don't take it personally." I let her words hang in the air while my eyes wandered over the house. The shell of what it once was. She hadn't just sold furniture, she had sold memories. Every object she got rid of had meaning. The couch where we binge-watched shows. The dining table where we hosted Thanksgiving. She erased me, piece by piece. But then I noticed something. Not everything was gone. In the hallway closet behind the door, she had carelessly left ajar. My old travel chest still sat. She must have overlooked it. Or maybe she thought it was worthless. Inside that chest were documents, keepsakes, and most importantly, a small black folder I hadn't touched in years. I didn't react. Not yet. Instead, I stepped closer to her, studying her face. "You've made your choice. I respect that." Her eyebrows shot up. She wasn't expecting compliance. She was waiting for me to scream, to beg, to break down in front of her. Instead, I gave her nothing. "Good," she replied, masking her unease. "Then this will be easier. My trainer's picking me up in an hour. I'll be gone by tonight." She walked past me, her perfume lingering in the air, Sweet, but suffocating. The papers will come soon. Don't bother fighting it. You'll lose. She walked into the bedroom, or what was left of it, and closed the door. I stood there for a long moment, my heart pounding. Not from heartbreak anymore, but from clarity. Laura thought she had stripped me of everything. She thought she had humiliated me to the point of no return. But she had overlooked one thing. I wasn't the kind of man who accepted defeat quietly, and when she left with her trainer that night, she had no idea the game had already shifted in my favor. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the half-empty living room, listening to the faint sound of Laura laughing outside when her trainer picked her up. The door slammed, the car drove away, and silence filled the house like an unwanted guest. I waited until the headlights disappeared down the street before moving. Slowly, carefully, I opened the hallway closet and pulled out the old travel chest. Dust clung to its edges, but the lock clicked open with the same brass key I had carried on my keychain for years. Inside were relics of another life. Journals from my 20s, photos of my parents, a few trinkets from my first business trip to Europe. But buried at the bottom was what I had been searching for, a slim black folder. I ran my fingers over it, remembering the promise I once made to myself. Years ago, before Laura, I had started a quiet project, a collection of investments, partnerships, and ownership stakes, carefully hidden under layers of trusts and holding companies. It wasn't illegal, just private. I never flaunted it, never even spoke of it. Laura always thought she knew everything about my finances, but this was mine alone. I opened the folder and scanned the papers. Shares in a startup that had since gone public, a deed to a small property Laura had never visited, and most importantly, access to an account she couldn't touch. The balance was more than enough to rebuild, not just my life, but something far greater. For the first time since her call, a smile tugged at my lips. She thought she had reduced me to nothing. She thought her betrayal was the final word. She had no idea. She had only freed me from the weight of her illusions. I leaned back, folder in hand, and whispered to the empty room. You took the furniture, Laura, but you'll never touch what matters. The following morning, I made coffee alone. The kitchen felt cavernous without our table, the chairs, the clutter of her recipe books. But the silence was oddly comforting. My phone buzzed with an email, a scanned copy of the divorce petition. She was moving fast. I read it, sipped my coffee, and closed my laptop. Let her rush. Let her believe she'd already won. Because what Laura didn't know was that every move she made only set the stage for mine. And I intended to play the long game, quietly, patiently, the way I always had in business. The day she walked out with her trainer, she thought she'd buried me. But all she'd done was hand me the shovel. The days that followed were eerily quiet. My once bustling home had turned into a hollow shell, every corner echoing with absence. Yet the stillness allowed me to think clearly. Something Laura never considered I'd be capable of under the weight of her betrayal. Her trainer's car became a frequent sight outside our neighborhood, a flashy black SUV, music thumping, parked boldly in front of the house that was still legally mine. Laura strutted beside him as if parading her upgrade for the world to see. Neighbors whispered, some with pity, others with judgment, but I stayed silent. I greeted them politely when I saw them outside, never once revealing the storm brewing behind my calm smile. At night, when I was alone, I opened the black folder again. Each page reminded me that I wasn't powerless. Laura had sold my belongings, but she hadn't touched my foundation. The companies, the investments, they weren't just numbers. They were leverage. One evening, I sat in the empty dining room with my laptop, mapping out the next steps. Laura believed she had erased me from my own life. But she overlooked the most important rule. Never underestimate a man who has built something from nothing. I contacted an old colleague, Daniel, a lawyer I trusted more than anyone. Over a discreet call, I told him everything. The divorce papers, the sold belongings, the betrayal. He listened quietly, then asked only one question. Do you want to fight her, or outsmart her? I smiled. Outsmart her. Then you'll need patience, Daniel said. And evidence. Let her believe she's already won. The arrogance will make her careless. That advice became my compass. The next day, I visited the bank. Quietly, without drawing attention, I transferred funds from my private account into a trust she couldn't access. I updated passwords, secured documents, and reached out to a financial investigator to trace exactly where Laura had moved the money she'd taken from our joint savings. If she thought she was untouchable, she was about to learn otherwise. When I returned home, I found a note taped to the fridge. Her handwriting was mocking. "Don't forget to sign the papers. The sooner this is done, the sooner I can move on with someone who deserves me." I read it once, folded it neatly, and placed it inside the black folder. Every word of hers was becoming part of the story I was building, a story that wouldn't end the way she imagined. That weekend, I saw her again. She walked into the house with her trainer, bold as ever, as if she had already claimed it. He carried boxes of her clothes while she lingered in the doorway, smirking. "You should find somewhere else to live," she said casually. "This place has too many memories, and I don't want my new life tied to your old one." I looked her straight in the eye. "Don't worry. Soon, this house won't belong to you at all." For the first time since this began, I saw a flicker of doubt in her expression. She covered it quickly with a laugh, tossing her hair as she walked past me. But I had seen it, and that moment told me everything I needed to know. Laura could dish out betrayal, but she wasn't prepared for resistance. She thought she was in control, but in truth, she had just stepped onto the chessboard, and I had already made my first move. Laura underestimated me because she always mistook silence for weakness. She thought my calm was surrender, when in reality it was strategy. And as the days passed, I noticed her growing bolder, almost reckless. She paraded her trainer through the neighborhood, as if daring me to react. He strutted around my lawn like he owned it, flexing his muscles, opening my mailbox as though testing how far he could push me. The old me might have confronted him then and there, but confrontation was exactly what they expected. Instead, I began gathering pieces of a puzzle only I could see. The financial investigator I had hired sent me a discreet report within a week. Laura had transferred our joint savings into an account not under her name, but her trainer's. She trusted him enough to hand over control. Or perhaps he demanded it. Either way, the money was no longer hers to claim. I studied the documents late into the night, the faint hum of the fridge filling the silence. Every dollar she thought she had stolen was now tied directly to him, and I knew exactly how to make that detail matter. Meanwhile, Daniel, my lawyer friend, advised patience. "Let her dig herself deeper," he said. "Judges don't look kindly on spouses who strip homes bare and drain accounts. The more evidence we have, the stronger your case." I nodded. Though inside, I wasn't only thinking about legal victories. I wanted Laura to experience something far more personal, the unraveling of the empire she believed she'd built. One evening, I returned home to find her trainer's SUV parked crookedly across my driveway. Inside, I could hear them laughing, music blaring. When I stepped into the house, I saw my once pristine kitchen littered with fast food wrappers, empty beer bottles on the counter. Laura turned toward me with a grin. "Don't mind the mess. We're just getting comfortable." I met her eyes, steady and unshaken. "Comfort doesn't last forever." Her trainer scoffed, slinging an arm around her. "Man, you really don't get it, do you? She's mine now. This life fits over for you." I didn't argue. I simply walked past them into my study and closed the door. On the desk lay the black folder, and with it the quiet certainty of my plan. Laura wanted to humiliate me, to leave me broken and stripped bare. But I had learned something crucial in business and in life. People who laugh the loudest at your downfall are often the ones standing closest to their own. And Laura, with her smug smile and hollow victories, was standing right on the edge. By the second week, the house no longer felt like mine. Laura and her trainer treated it as their playground, a temporary stage for their charade of victory. I rarely spoke to them, choosing instead to observe silently, carefully. Every careless word, every reckless action they took, was a stone in the wall they were building around themselves. And I had every intention of letting that wall collapse. One evening, as I sat in the study, I overheard them in the living room. Laura's laughter carried through the thin walls, followed by the trainer's booming voice. "You don't have to worry about money anymore," he bragged. "I've got it handled. We'll invest it, flip it, double it. Trust me, babe. We'll be rolling in cash." I leaned back in my chair, the corner of my mouth lifting. He didn't know I already had a full report on his so-called handling of the money. Reckless investments, shady partners, short-term schemes that always ended the same way: failure. Laura had put all her faith into the hands of a man who thought confidence was a substitute for competence. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had traded stability for bravado, loyalty for muscles, and empty promises, and in doing so, she had unknowingly dug her own pit. A few nights later, Daniel called again. "Everything you've documented: the sales, the empty house, the joint account transfer, it's more than enough. You'll walk into court with a solid case. But if you want her to feel this on a deeper level, we'll need timing, precision." I stared at the black folder. Its contents neatly organized now into labeled sections: assets, transactions, correspondence, notes. "I'm not just interested in winning in court," I said. "I want her to realize what she threw away to see with her own eyes the cost of her choices." Daniel chuckled softly. "Then let her keep believing she's ahead. When the curtain falls, it'll hit harder." That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the empty rooms, the echoes of our past life brushing against me like ghosts. Laura had stripped this house, but not my resolve. If anything, she had sharpened it. As I passed the bedroom, I heard her trainer snoring loudly while Laura whispered on the phone. I paused. "Yes, Mum, it's fine. He barely reacts to anything. Honestly, I think he's too weak to fight back. Once the divorce is done, he'll fade away and I'll finally be free." Her words stung, but only for a moment. Weak. That's what she thought of me. That's what she needed to believe. I moved back to the study, opened my laptop, and drafted the first email to Daniel that would set everything into motion. It wasn't about anger anymore. It was about strategy, about precision, about showing Laura that underestimating me had been her gravest mistake. Because when she finally realized who I really was, it would already be too late. The following weeks unfolded like a stage play, each act carefully orchestrated. Except Laura and her trainer didn't realize they were only characters in a script I was quietly writing. Laura continued her charade of power. She wore new clothes, flashy jewelry I knew she couldn't afford without dipping further into the money she had stolen. She paraded around as if life had suddenly become a fairy tale. But beneath her polished exterior, I started noticing cracks. Her trainer, Brian, I'd finally learned his name, was sloppy. He left receipts in the trash, notes scribbled on envelopes, half-baked business plans lying on the counter. One morning, when they both left for the gym, I picked up a discarded printout. It was a pitch to invest in a chain of fitness centers that didn't even exist yet. Numbers inflated, promises impossible. I smiled to myself. This was where their future was headed, straight into smoke and mirrors. Meanwhile, Daniel and I built my case like craftsmen assembling a clock. Every detail mattered. Every date, every receipt, every bank statement Laura thought she had hidden was carefully added to the file. We weren't rushing. Timing was everything. At night, the house became unbearable. Their laughter pierced through the thin walls, mocking me, even in silence. But instead of anger, I felt a strange satisfaction. They thought I was cornered. They thought I was powerless. Yet every reckless move they made was another gift. Then came the evening that shifted everything. Laura stormed into the house after a night out. Her face pale, her tone sharp. "You told me you had it under control," she hissed at Brian. "Relax," he barked back. "These things take time." I listened from the shadows of the hallway, unseen. She was unraveling. The man she'd sacrificed everything for was already disappointing her. The next morning, she looked tired. Dark circles under her eyes barely hidden by makeup. She didn't say a word to me as she left for the gym. The smirk, the mocking tone. That evening, Daniel called with news. "We've timed it well. Her actions, selling your belongings, draining accounts, moving in with him, it all paints a picture of recklessness. Judges don't favor that. You'll come out far ahead." I thanked him, but my satisfaction wasn't about the legal win anymore. It was about watching Laura realize the truth on her own, watching her face the reality that she hadn't destroyed me at all. She had only destroyed herself. 2 nights later, Brian returned. Their shouting lasted well past midnight. Words like money, failure, and mistake echoed through the thin walls. I lay in bed, eyes closed, letting every syllable sink in like a lullaby. By the weekend, the SUV was gone for good. Laura stayed, but she was no longer radiant or smug. She moved around the house quietly, her shoulders slumped, her phone clutched in her hands like a lifeline. And as I passed her in the hallway one evening, I realized something. Her smile hadn't just faded. It was gone. Laura tried to hide it, but the change was obvious. Her confidence, once so sharp it could cut glass, had dulled to something fragile and brittle. She no longer tossed sarcastic remarks my way, no longer strutted around as though she had conquered the world. Instead, she spent hours on the phone, her voice hushed, pleading. I caught fragments. Money back. You promised. This isn't what we agreed. Every conversation ended the same way, with silence on the other end and frustration on hers. I didn't need to ask who she was calling. Brian had vanished, and with him the money she thought she'd secured. The irony was poetic. She had laughed at me for being too predictable, too careful. Now she was left with nothing but empty accounts and broken promises. I watched her carefully, not out of malice, but with the quiet patience of a man who had been underestimated one too many times. She moved through the house like a ghost, avoiding my eyes, as though confronting me might force her to acknowledge her mistake. One evening, she finally broke the silence. Are you going to fight me in court?" she asked, her voice hesitant. I set my pen down and looked at her. "I don't need to fight you, Laura." Confusion flickered across her face. "What do you mean?" I didn't answer. I simply held her gaze until she turned away, unsettled by the calm she once mocked. She wanted me angry, broken, desperate, but I gave her none of it. That silence, that composure, was the sharpest weapon I had. The day of the first court hearing arrived. She walked in wearing her best dress, but her posture betrayed her stiff, nervous eyes darting around the room. I walked in with Daniel, confident and collected, black folder in hand. When the evidence was presented, the sales, the transfers, the reckless spending under her trainer's name, I saw her face drain of color. For the first time, Laura understood she hadn't outsmarted me. She had outsmarted herself. And sitting there, in that sterile courtroom, I realized my revenge was complete long before the judge spoke. The judge's words were firm, almost cold. Laura's actions had consequences. Her share of the settlement was reduced to almost nothing, while my assets, the ones she thought didn't exist, remained intact and secure. She sat there, frozen, her hands trembling in her lap. For years, she had believed she was in control, pulling the strings, laughing as she tore my life apart. Now, in the space of a single ruling, everything unraveled before her eyes. As we left the courtroom, she tried to catch my gaze, her lips parting as if to speak. But I didn't stop. I didn't need to. Words would have been wasted. Outside, the air felt fresher, lighter than it had in months. Daniel clapped me on the shoulder. You didn't just win. You outplayed her. But I wasn't thinking about winning. I was thinking about the calm that had carried me through this storm. Laura had tried to strip me of everything. My belongings, my dignity, my future. Instead, she had only revealed the strength I'd forgotten I had. That evening, I returned to the house one last time. The rooms were still bare, but they no longer felt empty. They felt cleansed. I packed what little remained of mine, locked the door, and walked away without looking back. Laura's smile had long since vanished. Mine, however, returned quiet, steady, and unshakable, because true revenge wasn't about destroying her. It was about showing her she could never destroy me.